Okay, so this photo is of Diamond Head, which is in Waikiki in Honolulu, Hawaii. And this was shot on a Canon Rebel T6, which is an entry-level DSLR. Now it is shot with a telephoto lens, as you can see up here, my 55 to 250, and it's shot at about 60 millimeters, which, okay, that's a little bit more than 80, around 90. When you consider the crop factor. And we've shot at f8. It's 1/80th of a second. I believe I was on a tripod, so I don't know. No, this was probably handheld if I wasn't at 100 ISO. Anyway, so this is near sunset, and as you can tell, it's very washed out. Part of that is because it's a RAW file. The other part is because the T6 is a good entry-level camera, but it's not a great camera. And as we zoom in here, you can see that, the mountain's pretty fuzzy, and that's partially just resolution woes, but also the fact that there's a lot of atmosphere here. Okay, so first thing we want to do whenever we have a RAW file is check our histogram over here. What we see from the histogram is that we're quite a bit to the left. That means we're quite a bit in the shadows, just overall, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to up this quite a bit, probably one AV looks good. Okay, and then let's start by adding in some contrast. Okay, so that looks nice. And then clarity is going to give us a little bit of detail. It's basically a local contrast, so it's not looking quite as shaggy as it was. Then, move our saturation up. We really want to get those yellows and reds and oranges in the clouds, and also up our vibrance, which is going to deal more with the colors and the highlights. Now, some people don't like modifying the white balance. They want everything to be absolutely true. I like to give my images kind of the feel of what it was like when I was there. One of the easiest ways to do this is to change the white balance. So if it was really cold out, I might change it down more towards the blue. In this case, we're in a tropical setting. It's sunset. We want kind of a warmer feel. So let's go ahead and up our white balance. That looks pretty good. Okay, don't need to do anything on lens corrections because we already have an automatic profile for that. Now, noise reduction. So let's zoom in, and you can see all these purples and greens that really shouldn't be there, right? So I like to use between about 10 to 15, depending on the image, for color noise reduction. And as you can see, that gets rid of that. Now, I don't like to use luminance that often, mainly because luminance tends to also decrease the detail, and we already have a lack of detail in this photo, so let's not push it, right? All right, so finally, let's go to our curves adjustment, and we'll give it a standard S curve right now. So bring up the highlights a little bit more. All right, that looks good. Okay, so this is looking rather good, and these are just our preliminary edits on the raw file. So if we take a look at what it was before, right, very washed out, very blue, to what we look now, it looks a whole ton better. But there's still some stuff we have to do, so let's go ahead and develop it. All right, with the develop out of the way, what we're going to do is get rid of some of this atmospheric haze. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go into here and we're going to go ahead and duplicate our pixel layer, and then go up to filters, go up to haze removal, and let that analyze. Okay, now that that's done, you can see everything is a lot more vibrant. There's a lot more color, right? We've got some purples in the clouds now. These are a deeper orange. So really, there's no distance except for everything. let's check the strength. We don't want to make things look too orange. So let's leave it about there. That looks good. Okay. All right, go ahead and apply that. And then I'm going to go ahead and merge these two. Actually, let's see if we might want to remove a little bit of that haze removal. You know, 75 is looking a lot better than 100% on that. So let's go back and remerge those. Okay, now that we've merged them, the reason why we're merging them is so that we can go in with our in-painting brush and remove a whole host of distractions. So you can see there are these little buoys in the ocean. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of those. Just because they don't, they stand out a little bit too much, and we don't want them becoming the focal point. And in fact, we'll remove some of the other water hazards as well. There's this guy. See, and the in-painting tool just really easily takes them out, right? Just stuff that we don't necessarily want. Okay, so that's all the stuff in the water. But I would like the forest to be completely clear here. And you can see we've got some houses, right? And I feel like that's distracting to our image. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in with the in-painting tool and remove them. Now, one of the pitfalls of the in-painting tool is trying to paint in something that isn't next to kind of a, for lack of a better term, a patterned background. Sometimes when you use the in-painting tool, it can perform its job rather poorly. And when you zoom out, it's obvious that you took something out of the photo. In those cases, well, you're kind of stuck with whatever was there, because otherwise it's going to look terrible. So let's finish getting rid of these houses and other little distractions. Okay, let's get rid of that one. We'll leave the little hut here. All right. So now we zoom out. So looking at it again, okay, we've got these two little things, right? They're just too bright. So let's see if we can't remove them. Okay, that's one. That's probably going to pop out now. And then we just want to get rid of the bright spot. Okay, now as you can see, this doesn't exactly look realistic, but we're zoomed all the way in, right? When we zoom out, everything looks very, very good, right? And we've got the buildings on either side, which kind of frame this, right? So now that we're done getting rid of all of the distractions, let's work on the mountain. So we want the tip of the mountain to be sharper than it currently is. So let's add an unsharp mask. And let's go ahead and add in some sharpening. So if we take a look, right, it looks much nicer when we're zoomed out. But if we zoom in 1:1, we can see it's kind of craggly and right, we've got noise and everything. But one of the key things to remember when you're editing a photo is what it looks like holistically, right? You can zoom in and pixel peep on anything and it'll look absolutely terrible. So one of the things that I want to do is I want these clouds to be a little smoother. So what I'm actually going to do, instead of undoing the unsharp because I want them even smoother than they were with the unsharp, I'm going to add a little bit of Gaussian blur. And let's see how 8 looks. Yeah, that looks nice. So I'm going to go ahead and invert that layer, and then we're going to grab our paintbrush, and we're going to paint in the clouds somewhat precisely. It doesn't have to be exact. We just want to smooth out the insides there, right? And this is also going to allow the mountain to pop a little bit more, right? Oh, managed to tag it. That's no big deal. We just come back in with the tool. We make sure that we don't edit the mountain ridge. All right, there we go. Yep. So another thing to remember is, especially in Affinity Photo, now I've used Lightroom. Lightroom and Photoshop, and they're not always the best when it comes to being able to work in what is known as a non-destructive manner. And what that means is basically if you do something, it's real easy to reverse it. It's not, you know, permanent. You don't have to spend forever clicking undo or anything like that. You can just change it, delete the layer, do what you need to do. Okay. So let's finish up. Obviously don't want to blend these mountains, or buildings, man-made mountains. There we go. That's what I meant. I know words. And again, this looks terrible, but we are zoomed in pretty far. And actually, I might want to take the unsharp mask off the buildings. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that I'm thinking about it. So this is the nice thing about re-editing a photo. Is you kind of know what you want when you go in, but sometimes you'll realize that, you know, maybe I don't want this or I don't want that. And really, not to sound too much like Bob Ross, but it's whatever makes you happy. It's your photo, do with it as you please, right? There's a point to learning a proper technique, and there's also a point to learning what you like and how you like to edit. Okay, now that this is all done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an Orton effect over the entire image. So an Orton effect, just in general, basically brightens and there we go. Sorry, had to get the right filter. It brightens and blurs at the same time, and generally speaking, what that's used for is to give it kind of a dreamlike look. So we add a brightness and contrast, which we'll modify later, and then we add a Gaussian blur on a multiply. Now, depending on who you ask, anywhere between 20 and 35. I like to go more towards the 35 on a lot of images. But, you know, again, personal taste. So let's go back to our brightness and contrast. Let's up the brightness, right? Because we want a dreamlike look, but we don't want everything to be pitch black. All right. So yeah, that's pretty intense, but that looks nice and dreamlike. Sometimes I also like to remove some contrast. There, that looks good. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and group those, and we'll call that Orton, because we want to control the effect kind of on a global layer, global level. Sorry. So so here's without, and then I like to put it around a 50 to 75. There, that looks good. Okay, so without the Orton effect, right, there's obviously we're losing sharpness and some detail, but it adds a nice dreamlike kind of glow to it. And in fact, one of the things I like to do is go into the blend options here, and have it be less affected to the shadows. Now this is highly dependent on the photo. But as you can see, it dropped that somewhat from the mountains because you've got these deep shadows in here, and it really applies it to the clouds because those are the brightest areas, right? So as you can see, this area is a lot sharper than this, and it really does make the mountains pop. And yep, that's it. that's it for this edit. So now I'll show you how I originally edited this photo. And kind of keep that in mind, and then I'll show you this away from the editor. Okay, so then let's take a look at both of them side by side. Okay, well, I'm going to say that I like the new edit, obviously. You might like the old edit. If you want to argue for one or the other, you can always leave a comment. And if you would subscribe and share with your friends and do all the YouTube stuff, that would be great too. And I'll see you later.